The clink of my fork against the porcelain plate sliced through the laughter at the table. "I own two," I said, my voice steady but unwavering. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating, a pause I would never forget. The room froze. My family's laughter died the moment I revealed the truth. I wasn't the underachiever they thought I was, and I wasn't going to let them hold me back anymore. I'm Kendra Ellis, 32 years old, and for most of my life, I had been living in the shadows of my family, always doing what they needed, giving them what they wanted, even when it cost me my own dreams. Every sacrifice, every penny, every ounce of energy poured into them without so much as a thank you. My sister, Mackenzie, always seemed to get the spotlight. She had everything handed to her. A free pass. A sense of entitlement. I was the quiet one. The dependable one. The one who never complained. Until I finally couldn't take it anymore. I've worked in real estate for years. Flipping houses, hustling to build something for myself. But no one knew that. All anyone saw was the woman who couldn't seem to settle down. The one still renting an apartment. The one who could never measure up to Mackenzie's success. Or at least, that's how they saw it. Dinner at my parents' house in Overland Park was meant to be a casual family gathering, but it never felt like one. I didn't belong. I hadn't belonged for a long time. We sat around the oak dining table, my family all decked out in their latest material successes. Dad, slouching in his chair, proudly showing off his new country club membership card, acting like it was some sort of trophy. Mom, as always, flaunting her latest designer purse red leather logo, larger than life. She'd practically kissed the thing when she showed it off. My younger sister, Mackenzie, was glued to her phone, scrolling through her social media posts as though nothing else mattered. "Look at this," she announced, her lips curling in that smug half-smirk of hers. My morning routine video hit 50,000 views. Brands are sliding into my DMs. She was obsessed with growing her online following, convinced that she was just one viral video away from becoming a household name. "That's my girl," Dad said, raising his glass in a toast. He sounded proud, but I could hear the judgment in his voice. "Always knew you had star potential." Mom beamed. "We're so proud of both our daughters," she said, glancing between Mackenzie and me. "Just in different ways." Different ways. I felt my heart tighten. What did that even mean? Different ways? Because Mackenzie's dreams were more important than mine? Because she was chasing fame while I was chasing something real, something tangible? But I kept quiet. I always did. My fork scraped against my plate, and I stayed silent, trying not to let the resentment bubble up. That's when Mackenzie turned her attention to me. "So, Kendra," she said, voice dripping with fake concern, "how's the apartment hunt going? I mean, you're 32 flipping properties left and right. When are you going to actually own something?" The laughter from Dad and Mom followed, like a pre-planned punchline. They all laughed at me, as always, at the quiet, invisible sister. I set my fork down slowly, feeling the heat rise in my chest. But I didn't flinch. I had heard this for years. The snide remarks, the belittling. It was always me who came up short, who never measured up to their expectations. Mackenzie's smirk only grew wider. "Seriously though," she continued, "everyone in real estate owns a house. What's the holdup? Bad credit? Too many student loans?" She leaned back, waiting for the laughter to follow. But that was the moment I had enough. I set my fork down slowly, the metal making a distinct, final sound against the plate. The laughter stopped. Dead silence. I looked at them, all of them, the ones who had always used me, mocked me, assumed I was just a stepping stone in their world. "I own two," I said flatly. No emotion, just truth. The room went dead silent. Mom's hand froze on her designer purse. Dad's glass paused mid-air. Mackenzie's phone screen dimmed in her hands. For the first time in my life, I stood up for myself. I didn't need their validation, their approval, or their support. I had built my own life, and I didn't owe any of them an explanation. One in Olathe. I flipped last year. I continued, my voice steady. Another investment property in Leawood. I closed on it 6 months ago. And for the last 4 years, I've been paying your downtown loft rent $2,500 a month, every month without missing one. But that ends tonight. Mackenzie's mouth dropped open. Dad's face turned red, but there was no angry outburst, no yelling. Just shock. They hadn't seen this coming. They had never thought I would stand up to them. But there was no going back now. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping harshly against the floor, and stood. "I'm done," I said. No yelling, no tears, just finality. Without another word, I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, leaving them frozen at the table, stunned into silence. I slid into my SUV and started the engine, the hum of the vehicle a stark contrast to the suffocating silence I left behind. The streetlights blurred past, each one marking the distance between me and everything I had just walked away from. The weight on my shoulders began to lift with every mile, but there was still a lingering bitterness, a sadness that I couldn't shake. I wasn't sure what exactly had pushed me over the edge that night. Maybe it was the years of quietly paying everyone's bills, my mom's shopping sprees, Mackenzie's rent, Dad's failed investment schemes, without ever once hearing a thank you. Or maybe it was just the realization that no matter what I did, I was always the second-class citizen in my own family. They never saw me, they never appreciated me. Not for my accomplishments, not for my sacrifices, not for anything. But something in me snapped that night. And it wasn't just about the money. It wasn't just about the houses or the properties I owned. It was about the constant taking, the draining of everything I had until there was nothing left for me. It was about feeling invisible, unimportant, and like I owed them my entire existence. No more. The texts started buzzing almost immediately. From Mom, from Dad, from Mackenzie, each one more frantic than the last. I ignored them all. I couldn't bear to see their desperate pleas, their attempts to pull me back into their world. The same world that had kept me stuck for so long. It was a cycle I had grown too familiar with, and I knew I had to break it. At the first red light, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. One by one, I canceled every automatic transfer, Mackenzie's rent, Mom's credit card payments, Dad's investments that never seemed to pay off. They were all gone. Confirm, confirm, confirm. Each click was like a breath of fresh air, a clean break from the mess I had allowed them to make of my life. I was cutting the strings, setting the boundaries that should have been in place years ago. And with every confirmation, I felt a little freer. When I pulled into my parking garage, I couldn't help but feel a sense of finality settle in my chest. I was done. The life I had been living trying to save everyone else while watching my own dreams slip away was over. For the first time in years, I walked into my high-rise apartment and didn't feel burdened. I didn't feel obligated. I didn't feel like I had to apologize for my choices. I just felt relief. The weight had been lifted. And it was mine to carry from here on out. It wasn't long before I realized that my family's financial chaos wasn't just affecting them, it was affecting me too. I had always been the responsible one, the one who picked up the pieces when things fell apart. But somewhere along the way, I had become the only one holding the weight, and I didn't even realize how badly it had broken me until that night. The years of financial strain had done more than just drain my bank account, they had eaten away at my sense of self. Every time I handed over money to bail them out, I had convinced myself it was for the greater good, that I was helping, but what I didn't see was that they were using me. They were taking, and I was left with nothing but a string of promises that never materialized. I should have known it was too good to be true when Dad called me that night, the evening before my planned closing for the property in Leawood. He was desperate, his voice tight, promising that this would be the last time he needed my help. But it wasn't. It never was. I had helped them buy time, I had bailed them out before, but this time, it was different. This time, I didn't care. I wasn't going to let their mess ruin my life anymore. Not when I had worked so hard to get where I was. So, I let it go. I walked away from the house. I walked away from the money. I walked away from all of it. And I made a decision that night, sitting in my apartment, that I would never let them drag me back into their chaos again. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, contracts, and phone calls. But amid the hustle, something inside me had changed. I was no longer afraid to say no. I was no longer afraid to stand up for myself. I couldn't fix their problems anymore. I couldn't be their safety net. I called my best friend Travis, who had always been the one to remind me that I deserved more. "They'll collapse on their own, Kendra," he said, his voice firm. "You've carried enough. Cut the cord clean. Don't get pulled back in with promises or tears." His words hit home. I had spent so many years trying to fix their mistakes, trying to patch up their lives with my own blood, sweat, and tears, but it was never enough. Nothing was ever enough. I had spent so much time trying to make everyone else happy that I had completely forgotten how to make myself happy. I had let my family take everything from me, but I wasn't going to let them take any more. I changed my passwords. I switched off my credit card payments. I moved all my business assets out of their reach. I even blocked their numbers. No more contact, no more guilt, no more sacrifices. The morning I made all those changes was the first morning in years I woke up without a weight on my chest. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt like I could finally breathe. The next few weeks passed in a haze of quiet clarity. I had been used to the noise, the constant calls, the manipulations, but now there was just silence, and I reveled in it. The phone didn't buzz with desperate pleas from my family. The emails slowed to a stop. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the tug of obligation, the weight of guilt on my shoulders. Instead, I focused on what I could control. I dove back into work, back into the flips, back into building the future that was finally mine. Every property I worked on, every deal I closed, was a little victory. A reminder that I was more than their pawn. I had learned how to be successful on my own without them. It was strange at first, not having their voices echoing in my head, but the quiet was a gift, and I started to realize how much of my energy had been drained by their demands. Now, I was using that energy to build something better, something real, a life without compromise, without feeling like I owed anyone anything. I threw myself into the new project, an old ranch house in Raytown that I had bought at auction. It had the potential to be something great, with original hardwood floors, but it needed work. A lot of it. And for the first time, I didn't mind. It felt like a true challenge, a challenge I could handle. I met Ethan during a county planning meeting. He was the architect working on another property in the area, and we struck up a conversation as we waited for approval on our respective plans. Ethan was different from anyone I had ever met. He was genuine, calm, and passionate about his work. He was also grounded. We didn't talk about money or success. We talked about what truly mattered. Design, vision, creating spaces that felt like home. It was refreshing. We met for coffee the next week, and that turned into site walks in the evenings. As we worked on plans for the property, our conversations moved from work to our lives, our dreams. He asked what I wanted, what I truly wanted. Not what was expected of me, not what I had to give to others, just what I wanted. It was the first time someone had asked me that in years. But as things with Ethan started to grow, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that kept creeping back. My family. They weren't completely out of my mind, no matter how hard I tried to move on. And then, one afternoon, the email came. A public records alert pinged on my phone, and I clicked it without thinking. It was a PDF from the Johnson County Register of Deeds, listing my parents' house in Overland Park as pending sale. I opened the document, my stomach tightening as I read the details. The house had been sold for 15% below appraisal, a quick cash offer to get it off the bank's hands. The second mortgage, $80,000, had triggered foreclosure, and they were out. I felt a strange mix of relief and regret. The house had been the last vestige of their false sense of security. Now it was gone, and they had nowhere left to turn. Later that evening, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the email in my hands. I could feel the pull again, the old patterns trying to resurface. I could reach out, I could call, I could offer help, but I didn't. The old Kendra, the one who had always been there for them, who had taken on their burdens without question, wanted to pick up the phone. She wanted to offer support, to make sure they were okay. But the new Kendra, the one who had learned the painful but necessary lesson of boundaries, knew better. I had given them everything I had, every ounce of energy, every dollar I could spare, and in return, I had been dismissed, used, and forgotten. They had never appreciated me. They had never seen me for who I really was. They saw me only as a resource, a means to an end. That ended tonight. I made the decision to let them go. Completely. No more contact, no more guilt. I called Travis. He had been the one who'd always encouraged me to protect my peace, to stop letting the cycle repeat. "You made the right choice, Kendra," he said when I told him what had happened. "They've got to sink on their own. You can't keep throwing them life preservers." And for the first time, I agreed with him. I wasn't going back. Not this time. I wasn't their crutch anymore. The next morning, I went to work. The ranch house in Raytown was now my focus, and I poured all my energy into it. I envisioned what it could become: an open concept kitchen, vaulted ceilings, a spacious backyard for barbecues, and maybe even a garden. It wasn't just a property. It was my future. Ethan and I worked together, bouncing ideas off each other. The project came to life, and so did the budding connection between us. The more time I spent with him, the more I realized I wasn't just building a home for myself, I was building a future. A future I hadn't thought possible until now. As the months passed, the property in Raytown began to take shape. I completed another flip, this time in Blue Springs, and profits started rolling in. My financial independence was growing, and for the first time, it felt like I was doing this for me. Not for my family, not for anyone else. I could see it now, what I had been working toward all along. My own vision, my own life, free from the weight of expectations, free from the constant need to appease everyone else. And then, one afternoon, as I was reviewing plans for the Raytown property with Ethan, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Come home Sunday. We need to talk." It was from my mother. The days leading up to Sunday felt like a slow burn. The message from my mom hung over me, heavy and persistent. We need to talk. There was no apology, no "I miss you," no acknowledgement of what had happened, just a demand. And as much as I tried to ignore it, the guilt crept back in, whispering in my ear. Maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe they were just desperate. Maybe I had been wrong to walk away. The old patterns were hard to break, even when you knew they were toxic, even when you knew they'd always pull you back in. But deep down, I knew what I had to do. I had already made my decision. I wasn't going back. I wasn't going to let them rewrite this story the way they had rewritten it so many times before. I had to stand firm. For once, it was about me, not them. Sunday came, and I found myself driving to the house in Overland Park, the place I had once called home, the place that had held so many memories, some good, but mostly bad. The place where I had learned that family loyalty meant sacrificing your own happiness for the sake of others. The house was quiet when I arrived, the driveway empty except for my dad's old sedan. I parked behind it, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew this wouldn't be an easy conversation, but I also knew it was necessary. I walked through the side entrance without knocking, just like I had so many times before. The scent of potpourri and lemon polish hit me immediately. Mom was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove, her back turned as she hummed to herself. Dad was sitting at the oak table, the newspaper spread in front of him, but clearly unread. Mackenzie was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. They all looked up as I entered, their faces tense, like they were waiting for something, but unsure of what. "Sit down, Kendra," Dad said, his voice low and controlled. He sounded like he was trying to mask the frustration simmering beneath the surface. I didn't sit. I stood there, envelope in hand, knowing this was my moment to finally put an end to the cycle. The pattern was broken. They wouldn't get away with it again. Mom stepped forward first, her eyes glassy, as if she'd been waiting for this moment too. Her voice cracked slightly as she spoke, her hand still holding the spoon in the pot on the stove. "You came," she said softly, stepping toward me as if she might hug me. But she stopped short, sensing that I wasn't going to be the same person I used to be. She reached out, her fingers brushing the sleeve of my jacket, but I didn't move. I didn't allow myself to be pulled back into their world of guilt and manipulation. "You've cut us off, Kendra," she continued, her voice trembling. "After everything we've been through, after all the sacrifices, you just vanished. You're shutting us out." Dad cleared his throat, folding the newspaper with deliberate snaps. "Family doesn't work that way," he added, leaning forward with an air of authority, as though he could control the situation with his words. "You don't just leave when things get tough." Mackenzie, who had been watching in silence, finally spoke up. "Selfish much?" She sneered, her arms crossed tightly in front of her. "You think money fixes everything? We're blood, Kendra. Blood!" I felt my pulse quicken, but I stood my ground. The guilt that had haunted me for so long began to melt away, replaced by something stronger. The truth. The realization that they were still trying to pull me back into their web of expectations, and I wouldn't fall for it again. I waited for the noise to die down. The manipulation. The guilt trips. I waited for them to pause, for just a moment, so I could speak. And when it finally came, I didn't hesitate. "I've paid enough," I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "From now on, there's nothing more. I've given you everything. I've sacrificed everything, and you've never once appreciated it." Dad's face reddened, his mouth opening to respond, but I spoke over him, calmly, firmly. "You raised me to stand on my own, and that's exactly what I'm doing. For all of us." Mackenzie scoffed, shaking her head as though I was the one who had lost touch with reality. But I wasn't the same person I had been all those years ago, silently carrying their burdens, hoping for their approval. I wasn't the same person who had played the role of the dutiful daughter, swallowing every insult and every disregard for my own dreams. The envelope in my hand felt heavy, but I didn't flinch. I walked forward and placed it on the table in front of Dad, the weight of it grounding me. Inside was the ledger, my meticulous record of every payment I had made to them over the past 7 years. The rent for Mackenzie's loft, the credit card payments for Mom's shopping sprees, the bridge loans for Dad's failed investments. Every penny I had given, every sacrifice, every act of loyalty. $140,000, I said, my finger pointing to the bottom line of the spreadsheet. "This is what I've paid you over the years. Every payment logged, no more." They stared at it in stunned silence. Dad's fingers hovered over the paper, but he didn't touch it. Mom's hand went to her mouth, her eyes wide, but no words came. Mackenzie snatched the paper from the table and skimmed through it quickly. Her face drained of color as the numbers hit her, and for the first time, she didn't have a response. The chili simmered forgotten on the stove. The room was thick with silence. I turned away, not waiting for a response, not waiting for their guilt trips to resume. I walked through the kitchen, past the fridge covered with old school photos, and out the door without a backward glance. The screen door creaked shut behind me, and I didn't look back. This was the end. The break was permanent. There was no going back, no more chances to get sucked into the same old cycle. As I drove away, the house shrinking in the rearview mirror, I felt a strange sense of peace. The kind of peace I hadn't known I was missing. The kind of peace that comes from taking control of your life, from deciding that your happiness, your boundaries, and your future matter more than the toxic dynamics of your past. Over the next few weeks, the silence continued. No calls, no texts, not a single attempt to reach out. And for once, it didn't bother me. It felt like freedom, true freedom. The space I had created for myself was mine and mine alone. I finished the Raytown project, selling it for a profit that set me up for my next big move. With Ethan by my side, I felt like I was finally building the life I had always dreamed of, one that was all my own. My family was still out there, living in the apartment they had been forced into. They never reached out. They never tried to fix what was broken, but it didn't matter. I had learned that the only person who could fix my life was me. Family isn't a one-way obligation. Cutting the toxic ties allows you to build your own foundation. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. I would not be dragged down by their mistakes any longer. And that, I realized, was the lesson all along. Protecting your peace is never selfish.